All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. And I'm going to get straight into it because I want to try to get out an Inner Demons episode to you guys tonight as well. If by chance I don't get that Inner Demons out tonight, I will get it out tomorrow night on Sunday. So real quick, before I get into this story, I want to say this. This story is one of those stories where there's a lot of different moving parts. There's a lot of different Mexican Mafia members that are involved. There's a lot of different characters. And it's one of those stories that if you don't pay attention to what's going on, you're going to miss the message. Now, those of you that have been with me for the long haul, day oneers, those of you that have been watching my channel for a while now, I would hope that you guys know that it's never been my purpose to use this platform to slander, demean, belittle, or to take shots at these criminal organizations. That's not what I do. I'm not a gang advocate. I don't get up here and tell people not to get involved in gangs. At the end of the day, that might be the overall message, but I leave that choice to each and every individual that watches it. I leave that up to them because this is the way I look at it. Those of us that have been through prison, that have been in the trenches, that grew up in gangs, that went through the county jails, through the prisons, that have been through that lifestyle, it's on us to teach the youth, this next generation. You know, it's on us to enlighten them and to really open up their eyes and show them what they're glorifying. At the end of the day, if that's what they want to still get involved in, then that's okay. Everybody has to make a choice. You got to make your bed. You got to lay in it. My thing is just to make sure that they get all the information so that they can make an intelligent decision. Again, I want it to be clear that a lot of these stories, when it comes to the Mexican Mafia, they're not my stories. And I don't, spin them. I don't spin the narrative. I don't put no tapatio on it. I don't try to put the 2 on the 10. I'm simply a conduit. I get the information and I pass it to you guys. And I try to do it in its true form. The reason why I'm telling you guys this is because a lot of the times I give you guys the good, the bad, the ugly. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't want to hear about the stuff that I talk about. But I'm not spewing poison. That's not what I do. You guys might not like it because you're still doing your thing. And that's respectable. I lived that lifestyle for almost 40 years. I pushed that belief system for almost 40 years. So I get that part of it. But, you can't really hate those of us that have been through it, that are no longer a part of it, that are trying to help the youth, that are trying to help this next generation. I'm sure a lot of you guys got kids and you want better for them. Well, what better way can they learn than through somebody like myself that has been through it? So that's the reason why I'm doing it. I don't have an ulterior, motive. I don't have a different agenda, a bad or foul agenda. I do this because I'm hoping, like I said, that there's some youngsters out there that are watching that glorify that lifestyle, and they'll hear these things and they'll be like, you know what, something will click, a light bulb will go off, and they'll say, you know what, that's not the lifestyle I want to live. I think there's a better way out there. So that's my purpose. And when I talk about the bad things, the ugly, sometimes they're things that I don't even want to talk about. But I have to put it out there the way it is. I got to put these realities out there. So this is one of those stories that there's things that people are probably not going to want to hear. But again, this is not me pushing an agenda. This is part of the realities of that lifestyle. Anyways, let me get into it. So, like I said, there's a lot of different moving parts to this story. There's a lot of different characters that are involved. Now, you guys know my history. You guys all know that I was an NF member. I was involved in that lifestyle for a long time. And I've always said that the NF and the Mexican Mafia, there's a lot of parallels. These two organizations, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of things that are almost identical. They're pushing, a line for the same thing. They both got the same purpose. They're trying to generate money. And for the most part, their beliefs are along the same lines. So with that being said, even though I'm not part of these organizations no more, even though I'm not part of the NF, I still have respect for the NF. I still have respect for the Mexican Mafia. I'm not going to get on here and start saying F this and F that like some other individuals have done on YouTube. I'm not reckless like that, and that's not my purpose. I'm not trying to antagonize nobody. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody. I'm simply trying to put this message out there. And a lot of it, again, is intended for the youngsters that glorify this lifestyle. So you guys have heard me talk a lot about the Nuestra Familia and the recruiting process, the things that they look for, the qualities, the characteristics, you know, a lot of the things that they look at and they'll say, you know what, this guy, he fits the NF mold. These are the kind of individuals that we're looking for. Somebody that has a strong propensity to commit acts of violence, somebody that will spill blood for the organization, somebody that will put the organization first and foremost before everything else in their life. This will become the one thing, the foremost thing that they're loyal to over everything else in their lives, their kids, their wives, everything. Well, the Mexican Mafia has its own set of strict rules that they go by in order to make somebody, to bring them into that organization. They adhere to these policies. They're called reglas. I know my Spanish is terrible. You guys, I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments. But anyways, you know, some of the reglas, they include things like no politicking against fellow members. Nobody that's, you know, been involved in homosexuality. In order to be made, you have to be sponsored by another member. You obviously can't be a snitch, or you can't have a history of cooperating with law enforcement. And I believe there's something in there as far as when you see a dropout or, you know, somebody that has defected from the organization, that you're supposed to do all within your capability and means to go after these individuals. So these are some of the policies that they live and die by. But to bring somebody into the organization, you know, you got to figure a lot of these guys that are brought in, they know their history. There's homeboys that vouch for them. They grew up together. They got family that knows family, that they're tied in. It's like a big network out there. Somebody got to know somebody. That's how they sponsor people, because they know about their history, or, you know, they speak up and say, this guy right here, he's you know, he's a down brother. This is somebody that would be a good, you know, a good fit to bring him in. So these are the things that they, you know, adhere to when they're making members of the Mexican Mafia. Those are just a few of the things that are not supposed to be compromised or manipulated. But for the sake of this story, I'm just going to say this. You know, I know a lot of Mexican Mafia members. I met a lot over the years from doing time in the shoot programs, Corcoran, Pelican Bay. I met a lot of them on death row. I've been on the same tiers with them. You know, I've had a lot of conversations with them up there in the Bay when, you know, we've conversed in the same pods back there. I wanted to pick their brains because I wanted to understand their belief system, the things that they live and die by. So I knew a lot of them. I met a lot of them over the years, and I had a lot of respect for them. And in a lot of ways, like I said, they were just like us. They were just from Southern California, and they were a part of a different organization. So from what I know, the Mexican Mafia, it lives and dies by these rules, and they're strict about it. They're not gonna, you know, manipulate or compromise their beliefs when it comes to pulling somebody into the organization. They have a, you know, a rigorous screening process like the NF. They want to make sure that they're not pulling somebody that cooperated with law enforcement. They want to make sure that they're not pulling somebody that got them fruity tendencies. They're not going to pull somebody that, you know, has the characteristics of politicking against, you know, their own brothers. You know, somebody that's a knucklehead. Is it absolute? No, nothing's absolute. Sometimes individuals slip through. Sometimes they make mistakes, just like the NF. Sometimes, you know, individuals get involved for all the wrong reasons. They're not true believers. They get involved because they want to carry that title. They want to use that title for their own personal gain, or because they want that protection. Whatever it is, there's individuals sometimes that slip through, that get recruited, they get pulled in, and they're not true believers. Or something comes up in their past that, they've buried. Something comes up from when they were 16, 17, from juvenile, from when they were a kid. They cooperated, they told on somebody. It doesn't matter how old you are. The way the Mexican Mafia and the NF, the way that they look at it, the belief system is if you're old enough to gangbang and you get caught up and you tell on somebody, then you're all bad. You're out there in the streets, you're out there gang banging, fighting, stabbing people, shooting at people. You're however old you are, you're out there in the streets, in the trenches, gang banging, and you cooperate and you tell on somebody, then you're all bad. It doesn't matter that you were a kid and this happened 15, 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. The point is you will never get into an organization like this if you have that kind of smut on you. And that's the reality of it. Like I said, is it absolute? Sometimes people are able to hide that stuff, to keep it buried deep in the closet, and nobody knows about it. That paperwork never comes up. Sometime, 20 years later, you get indicted, or you get a district attorney that digs way deep into your file, and a police report comes up, then it ends up catching up on you. But this is something that nobody knew about. So it happens. As far as politicking, does it happen? Sure it does. Some rules are made to be broken. Sometimes you get individuals that politic against each other, but that's what consequences are for. Somebody politics against somebody in that organization, they get dealt with. The MA is firmly against politicking, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So like I said, when it comes to making members, when it comes to recruiting, bringing people into the organization, they have a strict screening process, a vetting process, where they're able to look into your history. They're able to get at your homeboys from your neighborhood. They get it, they look at your prison history. There's a process that they go through that's pretty in depth. But again, a lot of the times somebody will slip through. Somebody has skeletons in their closet. They did something 20 years ago that nobody knows about. But would one of these organizations recruit you had they known that? Of course not. They do everything they can to prevent bringing somebody in that has skeletons in their closet, that has, things from their past that they don't want nobody to find out about. You can implement safeguards. You can implement a vigorous screening process. You can do everything you can, put all kind of measures in place, but it can still happen. With that said, let me get into this story now. And just keep in mind that this story is an exception to the rule. So in 1996, there was a youngster named Randy Morales, Muppet from the Avenues, that was executed for cooperating with police. Muppet was suspected of cooperating in a double homicide of two Highland Park gang members that got killed, Yogi and Wicked. These two murders were allegedly committed by Javier Marquez, gangster from the Avenues. So according to my source, this is what happened. So gangster at some point had got arrested and was locked up in the LA County jail for being suspected of killing Yogi and Wicked. At that time, Highland Park and the Avenues were in a fierce conflict, and they were considered mortal enemies. I mean, they were out there gangbanging. They had an ongoing rivalry where, they would catch Highland Park gang members slipping, and, they'd whack them, and the Avenues would get caught slipping, and Highland Park would catch them slipping. It was going back and forth. But at that time, they were embroiled in an ongoing conflict. Now, I'm not sure about the details of the murders or how Muppet came to find out about gangsters' alleged involvement. But at some point, Muppet caught a dope case and he ended up in the Los Padrinos juvenile hall. So he's there and he's probably trying to find a way to get out. Some detectives come up there and he agrees to an interview. And he makes a bunch of incriminating statements implicating gangster in this double homicide. So what ends up happening is, as the case starts to go through the courts, gangster's in the county jail, he's fighting the case. He's got an attorney that's, rolled up his sleeves and he's digging into the, to the meat and potatoes of the case. And he's trying to get as much of the evidence that they got against gangster. He's trying to get all the discovery. So a lot of the times when you catch a murder, there's something that's called the police murder investigation book. It's basically called a murder book. And I guess the district attorney had made 2 copies of this book, a murder book that was that detailed these killings and gangsters' alleged involvement in these killings. So what the prosecutor does is gangster's attorney is asking for all the evidence and all the the discovery, everything that he can get to fight this case. Obviously, when they got discovery, the district attorney, a lot of the times they don't like to give up the discovery. They don't want to expose their hand at one time. So they try to hold on to it, and they try to give you a little bit of discovery here and there to milk it. That's what they do. Instead of just giving everything that they got and exposing their hands, that's just not how they operate. So gangster's attorney, he's trying to get all the evidence, he's trying to get all the discovery, and the district attorney agrees to give him a copy of the murder book. So gangster's attorney's going through the murder book, and all the cooperators and the identifying information, locations, things that might tend to identify somebody that are too direct, statements that are made, all that stuff is supposed to be redacted. They redact it to protect, the sources of their information. If it's a confidential informant, where they live, their addresses, it's all supposed to be redacted. For those of you that don't know what redacted means, it basically means that when they write up a police report, usually the police report is going to have everything contained in it. It's going to have the name of the individual that is given a statement. It's going to have his identifying information, everything from his address to his social security number to his phone number. So the district attorney is supposed to go through that, and they're supposed to blacken it all out. So they're supposed to redact it. When they blacken it out, that's what redacted is. It's to blacken it out to make sure that when they look at these reports, they can't see that identifying information. Well, a lot of the times when these district attorneys have these big cases and there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of paperwork involved, especially these big criminal indictments against the NF, indictments against the Mexican Mafia, and there's a shitload of paperwork. A lot of the times the district attorneys, they'll get lazy or they'll do things in haste and they'll miss a name, they'll miss an address, they'll miss something that will tend to identify somebody. And before you know it, that individual ends up getting exposed. It happened when I was in the Santa Clara County Jail when we were fighting our cases. One of not my indictment, but I believe it was either Sammy Ramirez's indictment or it was Charlie Campa's indictment, where you had the 2 Lastra brothers, Lefty and Gato, were both making statements. And they redacted most of their statements. They redacted their names, their identifying information, and then the statements that were too direct, that if you read them, if I was out there dealing with these guys and I read something in the police report that maybe it named a location, and that right there would tell me that that's got to be Lastra, because me and him are the only ones that knew about that location. Those are the things that they're supposed to redact so that these individuals are not identified. Well, they slipped up and they missed something in the reports, and this ended up getting somebody sliced up. I want to say it was Lefty. What was Lefty? We read the reports. We seen his name in there. It was blackened out, but it wasn't blackened out all the way. If you really looked at it, you could see the name clearly, Lastra, Lefty. So, we ended up finding out about that. He was in the snake pits. He ended up getting sliced up. Well, in this situation, I guess gangster's attorney was going through the murder book and he seen Muppet's name and his identifying information. At some point, he communicated that to somebody. I don't know if he told Gangster, if Gangster seen it himself, but what they allege is that Gangster came to find out that Muppet made statements against him, and from that point on, he put a green light on him. Supposedly, he put a green light on him, according to the case, allegedly. So, according to my source and the case, Gangster gets on the phone. He calls a couple of his homies, and he's like, hey, this individual, he told on me, he's got to go. I got court coming up. He needs to be taken care of before, I go to court. So on October 5th, 1996, Muppet had a female friend drop him off on Drew Street, which is a prominent Avenues location. That's an area where, you can find a lot of Avenues gang members out there. That's one of their territories right there. So his female friend, she drops him off right there on Drew Street. And he was there because there was a party. So he was invited to the party. He attends the party and he's there. At some point, two individuals end up showing up. And the whole purpose why they were there was to find Muppet. Their purpose was to find him, find a way to lure him away from that party, to take him somewhere and to whack him. So I guess one of these individuals, they had dealt with Muppet in the past. They're all from the Avenues. These are some of his homies. So Muppet apparently loaned one of these guys a gun in the past. And, Muppet, he jams up one of these guys and he's like, hey, man, he's like, where's that gun that I let you borrow? I need that back. So these guys are like, they play into it. They're like, yeah, this is a perfect opportunity. We'll just play on this right here to get him away. Yeah, you know what? I got that gun. It's at the pad. I got it at the crib. He's like, we can go there right now, pick it up. So, Muppet, oblivious to what's going on, he agrees to leave with them. So they leave. They end up out there in El Sereno somewhere. So they already got it planned out. They're going to take him somewhere, pull over, and at some point, they're going to execute him. So they're driving along. They're chopping it up with them. They're rocking him to sleep. Again, he's oblivious to what's going on. So they get out there to El Sereno somewhere, and one of them says, you know what, I got to take a leak, bro. They've been drinking beer all night. They've been partying. So they all pull over. They pull over, and they all got to take a leak. They're all like, yeah, man, I got to fucking take a leak myself. So they get out, and one of these individuals got a cuete. He's got a cuete, and Muppet, he gets out. He takes a leak. This other guy, he takes a leak, and the guy with the gun, he ends up walking up on Muppet. Muppet was leaning down, tying his shoes or fixing his pants. He was doing something, but this guy walked up on him and executed him, shoots him like 5 times in the head. Whole reason why Muppet is killed, again, is because he was a cooperator. Within that lifestyle, we grow up as gang members. We're taught that snitching is wrong, that from the time we're little, tattletale, snitches, you don't fib, you don't go and tell on your friends. This is something that, when you get involved with gangs in this lifestyle, this is something that they forbid as well. It's a mortal sin to cooperate, to snitch on somebody. And the only way to deal with the snitch in this lifestyle is to kill him. That's the only way a snitch is good to one of these criminal organizations like the Mexican Mafia. There's no other way to deal with them. There's no consequences as far as giving somebody a fine, or there's no checks. There's no, sock them up or stab them a couple times. When somebody tells on somebody, the only way that they want to deal with this individual is to take him out. So that's what they do to Muppet. They kill him. Muppet was 16 years old. Still, like I said, he was 16 years old. He cooperated. And again, if you're out there, you're gang banging, you're old enough to cooperate. In their eyes, you're old enough to tell on somebody, you're old enough to get whacked. So that's what ends up happening to Muppet. The last thing I'll say about Muppet is, being that he was from the Avenues, I guess Muppet was also real tight with little Pee Wee, Richard Aguirre. And these guys, were all from the Avenues. Being that they're all from the Avenues, they knew little Pee Wee and they feared him. So once they took Muppet out, there was some discussion about, knowing that little Pee Wee was going to trip on it. So they were like, hey, this fool can't find out that we're the ones that knocked this fool off, because him and Pee Wee are close. Even though this guy told, they're still going to, heads are going to be rolling once they find out that somebody took Muppet out. He was somebody that little Pee Wee liked. According to my source, he seems to believe that Muppet might have actually been a cousin of the Aguirres, but that's unsubstantiated. I don't know, but they were close. So now fast forward to 2001. So there's an individual by the name of Edmundo Hernandez. They called him Magoo from East Side Longo. So Magoo was at a place out there in Long Beach called Hamburger Dan's. Anybody that's from East Side Longo, they know about Hamburger Dan's. So Magoo's over there with a couple of his homies. They're out there. They're up to no good. They got a gun and they're looking for somebody to jack. So apparently they're posted up in front of Hamburger Dan's, and at some point they see two Africanos walk up and they jump on a payphone. So I don't know which one of them confronted the Africanos, but one of them apparently said, "Hey, what's that East Side Longo like?" And the Africanos, they turn around and they don't understand what they're saying, but they know it can't be good. So they ignore them and they go back to making their phone call. But these guys, they end up pressing them. They push up on them. They pull a gun out on them. They rob them. They make them turn their top pockets inside out. They take their jewelry, take their money, and they let them go. These Africanos, they weren't looking for trouble. They were just out there in that area. Whatever they were doing, they weren't looking for trouble. They didn't want no beef with these guys. So they gave up their money. Obviously, these guys pulled a gun out. They just gave up their money and they split. So nothing happened to them. However, there were surveillance cameras out there in front of Hamburger Dan's that caught that robbery. That would later bite them in the ass and would later catch up to them. But like I told you guys before, a lot of the times when a gang member hits you up, when a gang member rolls up on you and they're like, "Hey, what's that East Side Longo like?" Or "Where you from?" 9 times out of 10, when a gang member hits you up, they already got it in their mind that they're going to jump on you or they're going to do something to you. So it doesn't matter what you say. "I'm not gang related. I don't bang. I'm not from nowhere." It doesn't matter. Wrong answer. Ping, pop, ping, ping, pop, boop, pop, 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 ping, pop. Oh, my shoe. So, I know that from personal experience. I used to jump out on cats, and a lot of the times we would ask them, "Hey, where you from?" And they'd be like, "I don't gang bang." Well, wrong answer. We still jump on them because that's what gang members do. They're looking for, they're looking for victims. They're looking for people to jump on out there. Even if they give up their money, they still want to beat them up, stomp them out. So they ended up letting the two Africanos go. They didn't jump on them. They just let them go. But after the robbery, Magoo runs one way. They split the money. Magoo runs one way, and his boy Dino, he runs the other way. Dino was another East Side Longo gang member as well. They were homies. They grew up together. So they both they cut tread and they go in separate directions. So when they're running in different directions, at some point Magoo turns around and he sees his boy Dino jam up another Africano. There was another Africano walking down the street. Dino allegedly ran up on this other Africano, pulls the gun out, and is robbing him. He starts robbing him, taking his shit, takes his jewelry, takes his money. According to Magoo, he didn't see no gun, but he heard a gunshot, and he splits. He runs, he keeps on running wherever he went. He ran home, he went to his girl's pad, he went to Sanchez, who knows? But he kept on running. Who knows where Dino went? After that incident happened, of course, obviously, law enforcement get called. They got a dead body out there on the streets. And, the cops come out there to investigate the homicide, and they're canvassing the area. They're knocking on doors, knocking on businesses, and they go to Hamburger Dan's because they know that this is a East Side Longo hangout. And they pull the surveillance videos. They look at the surveillance videos, and there's a cop. He's a gang cop. He's somebody that we all got him. There's that one cop out there in the neighborhood that fucking knows everybody, knows, all the homeboys from the neighborhood, knows all their ladies. It's been somebody that's pulled them over or has arrested them at some point in time. So this cop, he's looking at the video footage and he sees Magoo and he's like, "Hold up, man, that's fucking Edmundo Hernandez. That's Magoo right there." And he's looking at the tape and he's like, "And that's fucking Dino. I know who these individuals are." So that cop that night, he goes looking for Magoo because they see on the video surveillance that they just robbed two Africanos. And they look at the timestamp. It's however late it was, 11 o'clock. Well, they look, and 10 minutes later, there's a dead body down the street, another Africano. So they put two and two together and they say, you know what? It's got to be connected. So this cop, he goes looking for Magoo that night. He goes looking for him and, probably goes by his girl's pad, goes by his mom's pad. At some point, he catches up with Magoo. He catches up with him and he takes him to the Long Beach police station. So Magoo's at the Long Beach police station and, this cop, he puts him in an interview room and he tries to interview him. At first, Magoo tries to play hard. I ain't got nothing to say. I ain't talking. And, eventually, who knows what his intentions were. Maybe he thought he could talk himself out of that situation that night. Maybe he thought that, if he said the right thing, that this cop would release him. But eventually, he ends up consenting to an interview. And he implicates Dino. He tells the cop, he's like, look, I was over there at Hamburger Dan's. Yeah, I took part in this double robbery. We split the money. I was there. He identifies everybody that was involved in the video. And then he said, after that, I was done. I ran one way. My boy Dino ran the other way. At some point, I turned around and I see Dino jamming up another Africano. And, I figured he was probably robbing him. That's probably what was happening. I didn't see no gun. I didn't see nothing like that. I turned around and I continued to cut tread. I was going to my Sanchez pad. Then I heard a gunshot. So obviously he didn't say that Dino killed this Africano, but he identified Dino. He put Dino there and he knew Dino had a gun, obviously from that first robbery. And then he said that there was a gunshot. So he's implicated. That cop can figure out what's going on. Okay, you know what? This guy, he had a gun. He just robbed these other two guys. His boy said he heard a gunshot. This dude had a gun. There was a gun on the scene, and Dino's the one that had the gun. So because of those statements, they go after Dino. They eventually find Dino, and I'm not sure what happened from that point on. From what my source told me is that Magoo later on, he got his bearings, got his feet back up under him, and he tried to recant his statement. However, the damage is done. He made a statement to the cops, and it implicated himself and his boy Dino. And as a result, they both end up getting charged and convicted. Both of them end up with life sentences. So I'm not sure what happened, from the time that he got convicted, what happened in the county jail or none of that. But fast forward all the way up until Pelican Bay now. So Magoo at some point, he's a lifer now. He's got a life sentence because of this case that he was involved in. And he ends up out on Pelican Bay mainline. So this is around the time when, Todd Ashker and Danny Troxel, they won that lawsuit that got everybody out of the SHU program. So the doors open up, the floodgates open up, and now everybody comes out of the SHU. And Magoo's out there on the main line when all these Mexican Mafia members come out. A lot of them have been back there for 20, 30 years. So they came out looking like chalk, white, ashy. But, they're out. They're out of the SHU, and everybody's happy to be out. But they're out there with Magoo. How he was able to navigate from the time he made those statements up until Pelican Bay, I don't know. But he's out there with these brothers out there when they first start hitting the yards. So at that time, Spider from Catarana, he ends up with Magoo. He ends up in a building with Magoo. Magoo's a porter. And Spider takes a liking to him. He takes a liking to him because Magoo set him up with everything that he needed. Spider basically don't got nothing. He's been in the SHU program, but he hooks him up with everything. Hooks him up with some food, canteen, coffee, sweats, radio, TV, whatever he needs. He got him hooked up. And Spider started to take a liking to this guy. He took a liking to him because, he was a cool dude. He was a porter. He used to always post up at his cell. They'd always, be conversating on the door. And so Spider took a liking to him. He took a liking to him so much that Spider would end up vouching for Magoo. He would end up vouching for him and sponsoring him to become a made member of the Mexican Mafia. You know, anybody that's interested in reading the case, all you got to do is Google Edmundo Hernandez and you can see the case in there. So I'm not adding any details. I'm not exaggerating any of the facts. Again, I'm just relaying it to you guys how it was relayed to me. So now Magoo is a made member of the Mexican Mafia. Right now, today, Magoo is out there in Centinela on the yard, functioning right now as a made member of the Mexican Mafia. At the same time, if you Google Javier Marquez, gangster from the avenues, you also see a reference in there about Randy Morales, Muppet from the avenues, and what happened to him. So, you know, if you guys don't believe me, you guys can look it up yourself. But that's what ended up happening to both of these individuals. So the irony of this story is simple. On one hand, you got this youngster, Randy Morales, Muppet from the avenues, that was executed for cooperating and making statements. On the other hand, you got this other individual, Edmundo Hernandez, Magoo, from East Side Longo, that made statements, cooperated, and became a made member of the Mexican Mafia. And you know, with all due respect to Big Spider from Cantarana, everybody knows, or it's alleged, that he's the one that pushed the issue on Tonito from Wimas. He's the one that got that ball rolling. And, you know, Spider has been known to push hard lines on individuals that have cooperated. But little does he know that he actually sponsored somebody that made statements and cooperated. So, I mean, you know, I'm not sure what the circumstances are. I'm not sure if they gave him a pass. I'm not sure if they swept it under the rug or if they said, you know what, this cop fabricated these police reports. I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate. But it's a cold lifestyle. You know, everybody knows that when you cooperate, when you give up information, that you have a target on your back. And the only way that these people want to deal with you is to execute you, to take your life, to wipe you off the face of the earth. Everybody knows that. But here's an individual that somehow, some way, he ended up getting a pass. But you know, the other thing is sometimes it's who you know and it's what they decide to do in situations like this. I'm sure Dino catching a life sentence had to say something about this. So I don't think this is something that just got swept under the rug that nobody knows about. Surely Dino had to say something. He caught a life sentence based off of Magoo's statements. But it's a cold twist of fate. On one hand, you got somebody that got executed. On the other hand, you got somebody like Magoo that ended up becoming a made member. And the cold part about it is when Tonito from Wimas got killed, all the territory that he had, everything that he was overseeing out there on the streets was given to Magoo. So Magoo took over Tonito's, you know, his territories. He took over all the area, you know, out there on the streets that he was taxing. His taxation program, Magoo now is the one that's overseeing all that. Anyways, like I said, you know, when I put these stories out, you guys get the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm sure this is the ugly to a lot of people, but this is not my story. This is a lot of this right here is public information. It's stuff that, you know, it's easy. It's as easy as Googling it. You know, the only reason why I agreed to put this story out there is because, like I said, it's public information. It's out there. It's as easy as Googling. And if it's that easy, you know, I would like to think that this isn't something that people don't know about. You know, I don't know the circumstances of how it got cleaned up. I don't know, you know, how it got dealt with. That's not for me to even speculate on. Again, I'm just giving you guys a story. I'm conveying it to you guys. And, you know, it's one of those things that it's mind-blowing when you think about it. You know, how does it happen? You know, how does something like that happen? Anyways, with that being said, you guys go ahead and tap in and tell me what you guys think about this story right here. Tell me what you think. Those of you that might know about it, if you got a little bit of insight on what happened, how this was dealt with, drop a comment. I'm curious to know. This is one of those things that you don't hardly hear about these types of things happening, but this is the reality, one of the realities of this lifestyle right here. On one hand, Muppet, he ended up getting killed at a very young age for cooperating. But at the same time, Magoo was around the same age when he ended up catching the case that put him in prison for the rest of his life. So drop your comments. Let me know. Those of you that might be familiar with this case, let me know what you guys think. Those of you, especially those of you from East Side Longo that know these guys. What happened? How did this happen? Let me know. I'm curious. This is one of the things that's just it's a head scratcher. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and try to get out an inner demons for you guys right now. I hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. I hope you enjoyed your Saturday. Be safe. This your boy B, and I'm out.